Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
3 weeks ago, I was helping my neighbor move some heavy furniture into his new apartment. Everything was going fine until I tried to navigate a dresser down his narrow staircase. My foot caught on the edge of a step, and down I went, dresser and all. The result was a bright purple cast that now decorates my left arm from wrist to elbow. The doctor said I'd be wearing it for at least 6 weeks. The grocery store has become my biggest challenge. Pushing a cart, reaching for items on high shelves, and carrying bags all require creative problem solving now. But I've managed to develop a system that works, even if it takes me twice as long as it used to. That brings me to last Tuesday. I had just finished my weekly grocery run, which took about 40 minutes longer than usual. My good arm was tired from doing double duty, and I was looking forward to getting home and resting. I loaded my bags into my car, returned my car to the corral like any decent human being should, and was about to leave when I saw something that made my blood pressure spike. A woman had just finished loading her groceries into a shiny red sedan parked 2 spots over. She was clearly in good health, probably in her 30s, wearing workout clothes and moving around with a kind of energy I envied at that moment. After closing her trunk, she simply walked around to her driver's side door, got in, and started her engine. Her shopping cart sat there in the parking space next to her, completely abandoned. Now, I've always had a thing about shopping carts. It's such a simple courtesy to return them, and it drives me crazy when people don't. But seeing someone who was obviously capable of returning her cart just leave it there, while I, with my obvious injury, had struggled to return mine, felt like a slap in the face. I sat in my car for a moment, debating whether to just let it go. The smart thing would have been to drive away and forget about it. But something about the whole situation rubbed me the wrong way. This woman had saved herself maybe 30 seconds by not returning her cart. But now some other customer would have to deal with it, or it might roll into someone's car. I made a decision that was probably equal parts principle and petty revenge. I got out of my car, walked over to her abandoned cart, and grabbed it with my good hand. The woman was still sitting in her car, probably checking her phone or adjusting her mirrors. She hadn't noticed me yet. The cart corral was about 50 yards away across the driving lane of the parking lot. Under normal circumstances, this would be a 15-second task. With my cast and only one functional arm, it was going to be an ordeal. I started pushing the cart, moving at what felt like a snail's pace. The cast made it impossible to get a good grip, so I had to kind of guide the cart with my palm while using my good hand to steer. Every few steps I had to stop and readjust my grip. That's when the woman noticed me. She had backed out of her parking space and was now stuck behind me, while I slowly made my way across the driving lane. I could see her in my peripheral vision, sitting in her car, probably wondering why this person with a purple cast was taking forever to cross the road. I kept going, deliberately not speeding up. If anything, I slowed down a bit more. The cart seemed to have a mind of its own, wanting to veer left when I needed it to go straight. My cast was already starting to ache from the awkward position, but I was determined to see this through. The woman rolled down her window and asked if I needed help with the cart. I turned to look at her, making sure she got a good view of my cast, and told her I had it covered and was just returning the cart to where it belonged. I saw the realization dawn on her face. Her cheeks turned slightly red, and she quickly rolled her window back up. I continued my slow journey to the cart corral, with her car creeping along behind me at maybe 2 miles per hour. Other shoppers were starting to notice the unusual parade. A couple of people looked confused, probably wondering why someone with an obvious injury was struggling with a cart, while a perfectly healthy person sat in a car behind them. After what felt like 10 minutes but was probably closer to 3, I reached the cart corral. I carefully lined up the cart with the others and gave it a satisfying shove into place. The metal clang echoed across the parking lot. I turned around and looked directly at the woman through her windshield. She immediately looked away, pretending to be very interested in something on her dashboard. I walked back to my car, taking my time while she continued to sit there. When I got into my driver's seat, she drove past me. She kept her eyes straight ahead, refusing to make eye contact. I smiled while I watched her leave the parking lot. Oh, and my cast comes off in 3 more weeks. I was staying with my aunt for a couple weeks during the pandemic, just trying to get away from everything back home and spend some quality time with family. My aunt had always been one of my favorite relatives. She's the type who makes amazing homemade cookies and always has the best stories to tell. That day started like any other. My aunt suggested we head out to do some shopping at the big box store that everyone calls different names but sounds like World of Wolves, if you catch my drift. I was happy to tag along since I needed to pick up a few things anyway, and my aunt is always good company. We were having a great time walking through the aisles. My aunt was telling me all about her husband's latest woodworking project. He was building this elaborate birdhouse that looked more like a mansion for sparrows. She was also excited about a baby blanket she was crocheting for her newest grandbaby, showing me pictures on her phone of the intricate pattern she was working on. That's when we heard it. This voice, loud and dripping with attitude, cutting through the normal sounds of the store like nails on a chalkboard. At first it was just complaining, but then it got worse. The woman shouted rudely for someone to get out of her way. There was a pause, like whoever was being yelled at wasn't responding fast enough for her liking. She yelled again, even louder this time, demanding that whoever it was move immediately. My aunt and I looked at each other. I've always been curious about drama, maybe too curious for my own good, and my aunt seemed just as interested in seeing what was going on. We made our way toward the commotion. What we found was exactly what you'd picture when someone says, Karen. This woman had that choppy haircut that screams, I want to speak to your manager, yoga pants that were definitely fighting for their life, and a shirt that was trying way too hard to be trendy on someone who was clearly past 40 and not in the best shape. She was standing there berating this older gentleman who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. The man she was yelling at was interesting. He was probably in his 60s, with graying hair and this weathered look that suggested he'd seen plenty in his lifetime. But what struck me most was his eyes. They were sharp and alert, and when he looked at her, his expression was all business. He didn't say a single word to her, just looked at her for a moment, then turned back to whatever he was doing, completely ignoring her tantrum. That really set her off. She turned to another shopper nearby and started complaining loudly about how much she hated Texas and how everyone here was rude and ignorant. The shopper she was talking to was clearly a local, and he didn't appreciate her comment one bit. He told her to go home and explain that this was exactly why locals didn't appreciate people like her around here. He made it clear that they made sure unwelcome visitors knew they weren't wanted. That's when my aunt whispered to me what she'd overheard earlier. This woman had been going on and on about how much better California was compared to Texas, calling Texas a land of pumpkins and rednecks and making it clear she thought she was superior to everyone around her. The woman's face went red. Without warning, she hauled off and slapped the shopper right across the face. The sound echoed through that section of the store, but this guy wasn't having it. Quick as lightning, he slapped her right back, hard enough that she spun around like a top and nearly crashed into the nearest shelf display. When she steadied herself, he looked at her and asked if she wanted to try that again. You'd think she would have learned her lesson, but no. She started screaming about being assaulted and how she was going to have him arrested. Then, incredibly, she wound up to hit him again. The man just raised his hand, palm open, and waited. She actually went through with it, slapped him again like she thought she was untouchable. This time his response was even more decisive. He delivered a slap that sent her straight down to the floor with this satisfying oof sound, like air being let out of a balloon. That's when store security and the manager showed up. They'd seen the whole second part of the altercation, her attacking him and his response. Several other shoppers had gathered around by this point, and it was clear everyone had seen what really happened. But this woman was something else. When the manager helped her to her feet, the waterworks started. She began spinning this completely fabricated story about how he'd attacked her unprovoked, threatened to kidnap her, and all sorts of other nonsense that made zero sense to anyone who'd actually witnessed what happened. She demanded that he be arrested immediately and claimed he had threatened to take her to his truck. The people around her weren't buying it for a second. Some were actually rolling their eyes and making disgusted sounds at her obvious lies. The manager looked skeptical, and security was taking statements from the actual witnesses. When the police arrived, they quickly sorted out what had really happened. Multiple witnesses told them that she had been the aggressor both times and that the gentleman had only defended himself after being attacked. The ending was perfect. Instead of the man getting arrested like she demanded, it was Karen who ended up in handcuffs. And she did not go quietly. She was kicking and screaming the entire way out, which only made things worse for her. She actually kicked one of the officers and spit on another, earning herself additional charges for assaulting a police officer. During her tantrum, she managed to knock over 2 merchandise displays and completely destroy a shelf, so she got hit with property damage charges too. The gentleman who defended himself walked away without so much as a citation. When the police were finishing up, I overheard one of the officers talking to him with obvious respect. Turns out he was a retired Texas Ranger. Those legendary lawmen still exist today, though they work differently than in the Old West days. They're an elite law enforcement agency, separate from regular police and state troopers. My aunt and I watched the whole thing unfold like we were watching the world's most entertaining reality show. When we finally continued our shopping, my aunt shook her head and chuckled, commenting that the woman had picked the wrong Texan to mess with. This happened about 10 years ago when I was married to my second wife. I'm a chef and she worked retail at the time. We weren't rich, but we were doing pretty well for ourselves. We each had our own cars and shared all our money equally because it didn't matter who made more, we were married. So everything was split down the middle. My ex-wife wanted to take some classes to better herself, and instead of working her retail job, she decided to start babysitting for extra income. I was completely supportive of this. If that's what made her happy, then I was all for it. After she got settled into her classes, we put out advertisements for her babysitting service. I knew what she was offering for the price she was asking was way lower than what daycares charged, but she wasn't in it for the money. She just genuinely loved kids and wanted to help families out. She ended up taking on 3 children. There was a 4-year-old boy, an 8-year-old girl, and a 5-year-old girl. All the kids were well behaved and we had a large fenced-in backyard where they could play safely. We had plenty of toys and always provided snacks for them. Most of the parents were friendly and would come inside to chat when dropping off or picking up their kids. But there was one mother who was different. She would just walk in, tell her little girl she'd see her later, then turn around and walk away. No kisses, no hugs, no words of love, nothing. It always struck me as cold, but I figured maybe she was just in a hurry or that's how some people are. My ex-wife took care of the kids from 2:30 in the afternoon when the younger ones got out of kindergarten or preschool, and then from 3 for the older girl who got out of regular school later. Things seemed to be going smoothly and my ex was really happy doing this work. Then one Monday morning, not afternoon like the schedule said, this entitled mother shows up and drops her daughter off. My ex-wife was in class, but luckily it was my day off from the restaurant. I told the woman that she was early and that my wife was still in class, but I could watch her daughter until she got back. The woman just shrugged like it was no big deal and set a duffel bag down just inside our door. I had never really been part of the babysitting routine except to talk to the kids and play with them sometimes, so I didn't really know all the procedures for drop-off and pick-up. Then, like always, the mother just turned around and walked away without another word. When my ex got out of her classes and saw the little girl, she was confused. She asked the child where her mommy or daddy was. The little girl explained that her mommy was going away for a few days and said she was staying with us. My ex-wife immediately started calling the girl's mother, but it went straight to voicemail every time. She had another number listed as the father in her contacts, but that went to voicemail too. So my ex watched all 3 kids like usual, and the parents of the other 2 came on time and picked up their children. This little girl usually got picked up at 6:30 in the evening, but that time came and went. Then 8:30 passed. By the time it was close to 10 at night, we were getting really worried. The entire time, my ex had been calling both numbers with the same results, nothing but voicemail. The little girl had fallen asleep by then, so we put her in our spare bedroom. My ex called the police to let them know what was happening, but said we'd keep the child with us until we could reach her mother. After many more failed attempts to reach either parent, I decided to get on Facebook and look up this woman's profile. I was hoping to find a family member or some other contact we could call, but when her homepage loaded, my jaw hit the floor. There was a picture of her and some man on a cruise ship deck as it was leaving port. The timestamp showed it was posted just the night before. I called my ex over to look at it, and she was just as shocked as I was. She said she couldn't believe that this woman was on a cruise while her daughter was stuck at our house. I went through the woman's friends list and found her mother. I contacted her right away to let her know what was happening and that someone needed to come pick up this little girl immediately. We didn't sign up to be overnight caretakers. The grandmother told us she would be there as soon as she could. After about 2 hours, she showed up, but she wasn't alone. She brought the little girl's father with her. The way the girl squealed out and ran to hug him, I could tell it had been way too long since they'd seen each other. We invited them in for coffee, and the grandmother started telling us the whole story. She explained that her daughter had taken the child and ran off with some rich man she'd been seeing. She didn't tell anyone where she was going. That man in the cruise photo wasn't her husband. He was the guy she'd been cheating with. The father looked devastated but relieved to have his daughter back. He called the police from our house and had them come over to document proof of child abandonment. I showed the officer the Facebook photo with a timestamp from the night before. The officer had the father and grandmother go with him to the police station to fill out paperwork, but he took our statements right there at our house. We signed everything, and then they were gone. We didn't hear from the mother for the next 3 weeks, which seemed odd. I figured she would have called to scream at us by then. Then a couple days later, we heard excited banging on our door. When I opened it, I saw the father beaming with joy and holding his daughter's hand. I invited them in and told him he looked like he had good news. He said he definitely did and that we weren't going to believe what had happened. He filled us in on all the details. She was the one who made all the money in their relationship while he stayed home to take care of their daughter. In the last year before she disappeared, she had been getting more and more distant from him. When he confronted her about it, she told him he was being delusional and paranoid. He told us that one day he went to the store to pick up some things, and when he got home, they were both gone. All he found was a note saying goodbye and that he'd never see either of them again. When he went to the police, they said there wasn't much they could do since she was the mother. He explained that she'd been having an affair around the same time she started acting different, but he didn't put it together at the time. After she ran off with their daughter, he took the note to her mother, who did everything she could to help. She even hired a private investigator to try to find them. But his ex was ignoring her own mother too. He said it was just by chance that we found them through Facebook, and they couldn't believe their luck. He told us that our Facebook detective work had paid off big time because she got hit with some major charges and some minor ones too. He listed them off: child abduction, child endangerment, child abandonment, possession of a controlled substance, resisting arrest, and vehicle theft. She had rented a car at one airport and never returned it or told anyone where she parked it because she wasn't answering any calls or texts. The reason was that they had left their phones at home so they wouldn't be bothered on their romantic cruise. He said he might be forgetting some of the charges or mixing them up, but the important thing was that he now had 100% custody of his daughter. She got 16 years total in prison. The court also ordered that the mother have zero contact with the child indefinitely, at least until she finished her jail time and went through extensive therapy. The father was awarded the house and all their assets since he had no income and needed to support his daughter. Even the company where the mother worked cashed out all her stocks and gave the money to them, even though they weren't legally required to do that. He told us that it got even better. The guy she went on the cruise with owned a company with his wife. When all this came out, his wife started divorce proceedings. The company was started by her family and he never bought into it, so it all went back to her. She was also taking him to court for other things too. In the end, he lost everything, and she kept it all. The guy wasn't charged with any wrongdoing since he wasn't there when the child was abandoned, but his life was pretty much ruined anyway. My ex-wife was sad to lose such a sweet little girl from her regular group, but she and the father stayed in contact so she could still see her sometimes. They're still in touch even now. The father ended up getting a job as a server at the restaurant where I work as a chef. I didn't get him the job. He did that all by himself. I just put in a good word with my boss about what kind of person he was. I've since moved on from that place, but he's now a co-owner and still goes in every day to serve tables. All the tips he normally would make, he gives to the busboys and hostesses because they're mostly part-time high school kids who wouldn't normally get tips. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.